Is this your last meeting with us?
Check 1, 2.
We hear you, Jim.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council study session for May 21st, 2024. I will call this meeting to order. We have a few items on our agenda this evening. The first being a presentation and discussion of recommendations of the Community Engagement Task Force on focus areas related to homelessness and low-income challenges and kind and welcoming Gilbert. And I see Melanie Dykstra approaching the podium. Hi, Melanie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Yes, I'm Melanie Dykstra, the Volunteer and Community Resources Manager, and I was also the staff liaison to the Community Engagement Task Force. And as the Mayor mentioned, we are here this evening to present our final two topic areas, which will be homelessness and low-income challenges, as well as kind, welcoming, and inclusive Gilbert. We have members of our task force here with us this evening who will be presenting that information to you. So again, as I mentioned, we'll first be giving an overview of homelessness and low-income challenges. But as we look at that, the overarching goal that they looked at is to really make sure that there's an increase of resources, education, and awareness of those experiencing homelessness or low-income challenges in our community. And as we go through these, you'll kind of see the highlights of still trying to recognize the time frame, what it'll take to do some of these recommendations, whether they're short-term, midterm, or long-term. We also recognize we'll be looking at what kind of resources it will take to implement some of these recommendations. And we also understand that this is not going to be done just by the town. We'll be looking at who we can collaborate with, who our partners will be, and who we can engage in this process as well. So with that being said, I'm going to bring up Sean, who is Sean Warren is the chair of our task force, and he is going to take you through first the low-income challenges recommendations.
Good evening, everybody. Mayor, council members. I hope it's okay. I wrote down what I wanted to say tonight just to make sure that I hit everything that was on there. But I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Sean Warren. I'm the chair of the Community Engagement Task Force. And a bit of context, my wife and I and our 4 children have enjoyed our lives and our lifestyle here in Gilbert. Our kids have attended several of the public schools here. I've been able to help start and participate in building some businesses, and personally, I've been able to see a lot of the beauty as well as the brokenness in our community as one of the pastors serving on staff at Redemption Church in Gilbert. So thank you again for taking a few moments to give your attention to those of us who have worked for over 2 years now on the task force to bring some recommendations to consider. I'll endeavor to be brief and highlight just some of the recommendations and leave others for you to read on your own. A U.S. president once said, "Many in our country do not know the pain of poverty, but we can listen to those who do." And I pledge our nation to a goal. When we see that wounded traveler on the road to Jericho, we will not pass to the other side. America is at its best. It is a place where personal responsibility is valued and expected. I do not know why you ran for town council or the office of mayor, but I would like to think it's because you too felt personal responsibility to our community. It's with that in mind that I want to share with our shared responsibility what I want to talk to you tonight. I'll be presenting on the low-income challenges as well as homelessness. With low-income challenges, nearly each and every week at our church, we receive applications for assistance from within and without our congregation. One random Tuesday last March, we had 7 different people from the community come into us, and mind you, we don't have anything that we're promoting outwardly to come to us for resources. They just came to us for help. And by far, these are people that are from without our church, from just the community in general. There are times that they simply come in for something to eat. Other times they come in for emergency shelter. They also come in for rent and utility assistance. Too often, these individuals simply do not know the resources that we currently have available for them, which reminds me of the quote, "The problem with communication is the assumption that it's going on." We, the task force, recommend identifying a referral system. I think I'm supposed to, there we go, a referral system to help close the loop for those seeking assistance. And we believe it would be a prudent and money well spent to pilot a town staff position to follow up with individuals in our community who've had direct contact with public safety teams, fires, et cetera, who most likely have a high need for the resources of our local government and what we provide. We also believe as a task force, we need more needs to be done in finding resources to help with rent and utility programs. And this is a common thing that we hear. And I don't know if you're like me, too often I lead with skepticism and some judgment. Yet another person looking to play the system, or we can't resource everyone who has an outstretched hand to us, or just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, man, like other people do. But that is me when I'm being most like Mr. Potter on It's a Wonderful Life. But in reality, there are many good people of our community who are just having a really rough way to go, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. So I want to illustrate that with a couple of stories for you. For the past couple of years, we have opened a cooling station at our church in partnership with the town and other local nonprofits to give a reprieve to the vulnerable during our hottest months, which, by the way, over 600 people died last year in our area to heat-related issues. But last July, when we were experiencing our run of hot temperatures over 110 degrees, an elderly man ambled into our cooling station. As I engaged him in conversation, I found out that he was 80 years old. And the apartment complex he was living in had raised his rent by 40%. Not having any family around, he found himself evicted, alone, and not knowing what to do. That, council members, is something that we all can agree on, that this is what we would consider a vulnerable person in our society. Ultimately, he found his way to our cooling station, and the good people of Ascend and the Salvation Army helped him take up his cause. He's 80, newly homeless, in crisis, living in Gilbert. Another picture is of a man who recently came into my office. He had been working a full-time job and another part-time job for nearly a decade to make ends meet with his wife and small children. He was absolutely crushed to have to approach anyone for assistance. He felt like a failure, tears ran down his face. He took up yet another part-time job to try to make things work out. But he couldn't pay his mortgage and utilities. We helped him find assistance to keep him and his family in their homes, utilities on, and everyone safe. He's just a regular guy, working hard, living paycheck to paycheck, and not being able to make ends meet. Both of these stories illustrate vulnerable populations in our town who are in need of utility and rent assistance. Also, under low-income challenges, something we would recommend the council explore is options for developing tiny homes on our infill properties, as well as working with nonprofit partners to create opportunities for this type of housing on their land. We would know, while we know this doesn't end all of the low-income challenges by any means, it still allows us to create some opportunities for people to find a good home. With education and awareness, we need those of you who control policy in our town to really know the true cost of living in an apartment in Gilbert. As of today, a studio apartment will cost you north of $1,500. That's a studio apartment about 750 square feet. And a 3-bedroom will cost you more than $2,300 a month. We recommend more education to our community in partnerships with nonprofits to provide more financial education to our citizens, and especially our young people as they are trying to navigate how to live in such an expensive environment that's gone up so quickly. Now, moving on to homelessness, we highly recommend embedding a navigator with our public safety to go on calls to help connect people to resources. I've watched firsthand how critical a navigator can be in connecting an individual who has great need to resources that we actually have. This would be money very well spent. We would also ask the council to consider more temporary safe spaces, which would include being able to house someone in a hotel briefly who may be experiencing domestic violence, the use of more heat relief locations throughout Gilbert, more advocacy for the iHelp program, and identifying locations such as vacant businesses and commercial places that could be used to help service the needy. We also want to encourage the council to consider the following, and this is something that's actually close to my heart. Gilbert is a town replete with religious institutions, churches, stakes, and nonprofits. Many of these buildings are situated on large parcels of land that go largely unused throughout the week, or simply contain a very well-maintained lawn. Imagine if these organizations worked with the town and built some housing on their property with pre-approved plans by the city that would provide, say, for that 80-year-old man that I was talking about that became recently homeless. Or imagine if our religious institutions and nonprofits had a few homes on their sites that would help with the housing of young people who are aging out of the foster care system, or people escaping domestic violence. So much land, so much need. Perhaps the council could consider ways to bless the vulnerable of our community by leveraging the relationships with nonprofits to provide housing to some. Do for one what you wish you could do for all is my personal motto. And lastly, under the banner of homelessness, our task force was shocked to hear how many students in our schools would be considered homeless. Students in our area right here. Students who couch surf, who live in cars. We recommend working closely with our schools to get a better understanding of this situation. These are the very students who face real possibilities of falling through the cracks and into deep poverty, addiction, trafficking, or worse. Our town of Gilbert is a place to live, is a great place to live. We have great resources, parks, restaurants, shopping, good education, jobs, and a high standard of living. For this, we are to be commended. But our job isn't done. I want to leave you with the words of Mahatma Gandhi when he said, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats the most vulnerable members." Thank you, Council, for the consideration of these things.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for all you do, not only with our Community Engagement Task Force, but with Redemption Church. And the last time I most recently saw you, you were at the Northwest Redevelopment Area meeting. So I know that you're very involved in the community, and I appreciate that. I see other members of your Community Engagement Task Force here too, and I appreciate them being here in attendance this evening. Melanie, do you have follow-up?
Were there any questions regarding that area at all?
Any questions, anyone? Questions or comments?
Okay.
Seeing none?
Not, we'll move on to the final topic area that the task force took on to review and understand, which is kind, welcoming, and inclusive Gilbert. And with this area, again, they really looked at the three buckets that we've been focusing on: resources, education, and awareness, and looking really for resources that really kind of help make a welcoming and informative experience for those coming here. Around education, really understanding that trauma can really impact a lot of things, so trauma-informed trainings and opportunities for education, and then just general awareness and really kind of reigniting our kindness campaign through art and culture. And with that, I'm going to bring up Suzanne Lunt, who is our vice chair for the task force, and she is going to take you through those as well.
Thank you, Melanie. Melanie's been a pleasure to work with. I can't say enough good about her and the good things that she does for our town. Thank you for allowing me, Mayor and Town Council, to speak to you tonight about the things that we've done. A few years ago, when I heard about this new task force being formed to bring ideas about difficult situations that arise in our town, I was really excited. As I looked into it and I saw that we may address the topic of helping Gilbert to be kind, welcoming, and inclusive, I knew that this was something that I needed to participate in. Being a kindergarten teacher, this is what I teach every day, and so I really feel it, and I'm so honored to present to you today about what we've come up with. Let's first just have a little background. Back in the 1830s, Alexis de Tocqueville, a French political thinker and historian, visited America, and he wrote his famous work, Democracy in America. He observed that as Americans come together, they form bonds of association, and he was impressed with how Americans created groups of friendship, performed good works together. He said if men and women are to remain civilized or become so, the art of association must grow and expand. I really like that term, the art of association. More recently, as I've listened to Michael Sperkana, you might be familiar with him, a podcaster and author and radio personality, he's been talking about how we've been losing the art of mingling, which is just another way of saying that. And as we think about it with the pandemic and screen time and political polarization, it's not quite as safe to just start talking to someone because you don't know really what's going to happen. And so it's really important to remember that with conversation and friendship, even with strangers, we can improve our psyche. One problem that we face in Gilbert and globally is we have lost or forgotten the art of mingling or association. And while we can be in touch with anyone by tapping on our screens, we are finding ourselves to be lonelier than ever. It is our human nature to need to be part of a group. And since the pandemic and even before, our community members have less of a feeling of belonging. And in Gilbert, we can do better. Our committee recommends that we use resources, education, and awareness so that everyone, regardless of race, religion, disability, political party, can be treated with respect and empathy. We want Gilbert to be a secure place of belonging with neighbors who are willing to help each other. Let's look at some of our recommendations for using our resources. So I think we're ready for the next slide, are we? Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to share some of our favorites. We suggest offering a welcoming program for our new residents. We suggest developing a Gilbert 101 education program where we can teach people about our town operations and what's available for them here. We can create a safe environment to share diverse opinions. We can learn to disagree better. And we can continue to promote that Gilbert Kindness program that we've had in place for years and maybe bring that around to be more prominent in our walk and talk in Gilbert. Our committee has learned that as we interact with members of the community, we need to be aware and use trauma-informed and early intervention practices. So many of us have had traumatic experiences. I think almost everyone has. And so as we try to be more informed and sensitive about that, it will help in all of our areas with our community. Let's go to information. We can increase awareness of town resources and utilize social media to highlight cultural events and also share stories of kindness that happens in our community all the time. In development, we suggest that we can do more to help connect neighborhoods. As neighbors work together on improving environments, a feeling of unity and welcoming is created. Just a few weeks ago with Just Serve, my husband Dale and I were able to participate in a neighborhood beautification project that just turned out great. And now at the entrance of all of our neighborhoods, we have flowers that are blossoming. And I can tell that as we work together as a community, it was a great way to come together. Okay. Let's see. We can train and promote greater diversity and sensitivity. In marketing, we can reemphasize the Gilbert Kindness campaign, as I suggested before. We can promote dialogue through art and cultural events. We can promote the town's YouTube channel and Discover Gilbert campaign. We appreciate the increased transparency of our town leadership and the efforts that are taking place to be kinder and more welcoming. We have noted that our town leaders can really set the tone for how we interact with each other, and we appreciate your examples. Next, we're moving on to inclusivity, how we can be more inclusive. I'd like to share just a few of our favorites that got us really excited. Have you ever heard of the Human Library Program? We'd like to explore having a Gilbert Human Library Program where you can meet people who are centurions or Holocaust survivors or artists and musicians, local hikers, etc. As community members have the opportunity to meet face-to-face, they can create those associations. We suggest providing some free access to sports and other programs for our kids and youth. I've visited with people who have come from communities where the kids' sports are provided for everyone and that all the kids come out. And so I know that we may not be able to provide it for everybody, but as we make resources available to people so that every kid has a chance to be involved in our community and feel like they're part of a group, that will help. We'd like to explore adding an annual day of dialogue with the focus on similarities and also differences and sharing stories. In conclusion, we are just suggesting that we use our resources, that we can educate better and bring a greater awareness to our Gilbert community so that we can become more kind, welcoming, and inclusive. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but we felt so passionate about this, and we would love to continue to support in any way that we can so that Gilbert can be a really kind place. Thank you.
Well, Suzanne, I don't think they could have picked a more perfect person to present to us on kindness
Thank
and
you.
sweetness. I mean, you are the epitome of that here in Gilbert, I think. Everyone that knows you, I believe, would completely agree with me. I've been to your kindergarten classroom, and the children are just adorable, and you're always so lovely. No matter where I see you, you're always so lovely. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, too. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councilmember Torgerson, any comments or questions? I don't want to forget he's up there.
Okay, Just to wrap up, Mayor and council members, in terms of next steps, staff will be returning to the council in fall with a final report that will highlight some of our potential partnerships and looking how we can implement some of these objectives and just bring that back to you. But before I wrap up, I do want to just send my great thanks to this group who over the last 2.5 years had over 23 meetings. They listened to 31 different presentations. They read, reviewed 15 book assessments and had lots of different homework to do. They spent 60 hours in meeting time. They did come up with like these 3 buckets that I think are really nicely done to really identify resources, education, and awareness. And overarchingly, the whole group put together 111 different recommendations over these 5 topic areas. So I just want to say my big thanks to them. They worked very hard in providing this information to us as a town, which I think will result in some great ways to move the needle, which some have actually already been implemented. So we already heard them along the way and have already tried to create some of these opportunities, such as like our crisis response team that got started with an embedded victim advocate. That's one of the pieces that got started. Continuing to look at some of these increased partnerships that we're excited this year with heat relief, as Sean mentioned, that it's expanded and we actually will have coverage all the way from June through September, which is new for us, which was great knowing that that was a need. So we just feel really fortunate that they brought to light some of the really important areas and we were able to do that. I also want to thank Councilmember Tilke for being a guiding light along our process and being at all of our meetings. And also, I know Kathleen Dollar is here as well, and she helped facilitate many of our meetings, which really helped keep us on track and on the subject area and making sure we were moving with progress forward. So in conclusion, I just wanted to read a quote if I could. Volunteerism is the voice of the people put into action. These actions shape and mold the present into a future of which we can all be proud. And that's Helen Dyer. And I really feel like this group really highlights the volunteerism piece that they've done. So really appreciate the time and opportunity to work with them. And I can answer any other questions.
Thank you, Melanie. Councilmember Tilke?
Thank you, Mayor. You stole all my thunder there, Melanie, but I'm glad you did. You did a great job. I wanted to make sure we thanked everybody that participated. In addition to that, I wanted to make sure we recognize you, Don Prince, and Judy Martinez, who was with us the entire time, and we couldn't have got through it without that staff support. Just as a reminder to the council, you know, the goal was for us to come back after each pillar and just give you a highlight of some of the recommendations. As Melanie mentioned, the final recommendations will be coming back this fall. I think when you look at the recommendations for each of the pillars, you can see that we can't do this alone. The town of Gilbert can't solve all these problems as an organization by ourselves. It's going to take our community, our faith community, our schools, everybody coming together to help address these. And part of that final recommendation will recommend some of those partnerships that we already have. From the very beginning, we wanted to identify how we can close those gaps and how can we actually move the needle. Not just talk about it, but actually make a difference in our community. And I believe all of the hard work this committee has put into this is going to bring us great recommendations and a path forward. I also wanted to mention that, and I'm losing my train of thought, I apologize, I have a headache today, so it's losing me, but anyway, we will be coming back with more recommendations. I anticipate as we move forward to the teen violence pillar that you'll see those same 3 categories, because I think they fit together very well on resources, education, and awareness, and looking at those partnerships in the future as well. So I just can't thank this task force enough for the amount of time they gave out of their lives to devote back to helping those in our community. So thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Suzanne and Sean, for being here.
Any other comments? I want to say, again, thank you for all the work that you've done. I know that Melanie just did a synopsis of the time that you've given and all of the materials that you reviewed, but I don't think it captures how heavy the topics were that you reviewed over the past 2 years, and that, I know that has to have weighed on all of you, and I appreciate the time and effort that you put into all of that and all of the work that you've done for this community, and you are making Gilbert a better place to be. So thank you for your time and efforts, and we appreciate all of it. We really do. We can't say much from up here, but we really do appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you. Thank you for being here, too.
Yep. Yep.
Is that, Councilmember Torgerson, is that you?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Would you like to add
Unfortunately-
anything?
Well, I just want to say that to, in a sense, echo what Kathy was saying, is that the town, people can't be looking at the town to solve all their problems. If we can make introductions, put, some programming together to help, that's great. But for people to be coming to the town to solve the problems, society is going to solve its own problems. And to quote Tocqueville, I mean, the man wrote about the incarceration of people in America. He had an entire book on it, and you can't cherry pick certain things he says about culture. He condemned American culture in a lot of ways. So, I just wanted to say that the work of people, let's say like Jesse with Kindness USA, those things were great and should continue to be promoted and embraced. But Council Member Tilke is entirely correct that we can't solve all the problems. Maybe we can move the needle a little bit, but let's not try to expect that we solve everything. I think it would be very nice to take a deep breath and do what we can do and move forward, but not take this on as a massive project, because it's just, I hate the term of role of government, but we're half the problem. If we could even be close to half the solution, it'd be amazing. But I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you all. Moving on to our next topic, we are looking at a presentation and discussion on subdivision text amendment.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm
Tom
Tom
Condit.
Condit,
Wow.
Development Engineering Manager for the town. So what I've got to talk to you about tonight is a text amendment for the Land Development Code, and it's relating to our final plat approval process. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about our current regulations regarding our final plat approvals, and there's been some recent changes to state law that allow for administrative approval for certain items. So we currently process about 20 or 25 applications for final plats, and this is subdivisions and minor subdivisions annually. The process goes through a formal submittal to the Development Services Department, staff review of the submitted information, and these plats are basically subdivisions of land. So you might have a 20-acre piece of land that's being subdivided into, anywhere from 4 to maybe 40 different individual land parcels. The staff then reviews that submitted information. We prepare a staff report. You've seen these in your council packets routinely throughout the years. And then then you make a decision to approve or deny the final plat, and then we record it. So it's a fairly straightforward, simple process. In May of 2023, Senate Bill 1103 was signed into law, and this allowed, it had widespread municipal support and League of Cities support and support from the town of Gilbert. What the bill allows for is the review and approval of preliminary plats, final plats, and plat amendments without the process of an administrative approval by the town council. The Development Services Director or designee would then be allowed to approve the plats without waiting for the council action. We expect that should you move forward with this and we make these adjustments, will significantly reduce the amount of time it takes to receive final plat approval. Side note on that, typically these final plats are one of the last things that the developer does as they're preparing to get their permits. And it can be a 2-week process to load it up into council, get the staff report done, and then another maybe week or so to get all the signatures and get it done and recorded. So it would be a time savings for the developers. And last thing I want to mention on that, what we're proposing is amending the final plat process, not the preliminary plat process. We still think there is a need to go through that more detailed review at that preliminary plat stage. So we analyzed the bill and we're recommending revisions. Some of these revisions would allow the Development Services Director or designee to administratively approve plats consisting of less than 300 lots and that may contain right-of-way, public right-of-way and easement dedications necessary for the subdivision. Under the current LDC language, all these plats must be approved by Town Council. Also, it allows any administrative approvals should the applicant not agree with the town staff. Maybe we deny it for one reason or another and they want to move it forward. They can appeal to the Town Council. And then there's various technical and conforming changes that are being made as well. So on May 1st, the Planning Commission went through their process initiating this text amendment, and the required citizen review was conducted. So just a quick summary of the types of plats. Final plats, which are approved by the Town Council, our current code says that a regular subdivision plat is 5 or more lots or parcels. Minor subdivision is 4 lots or less, and those also need to come to the Town Council currently. Then the minor land division, which is an administrative process, this is for basically very small divisions of land, 2 or 3 lots on 2.5 acres, things like that, lot ties, lot splits, that sort of thing. So, and again, just the revisions will expedite the application and approval of these plats, and we will align the minor subdivision application process with the minor land division process, and also the revisions align the appeal process. And I think that is all I have. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions? Councilmember Tilkey?
Thank you. Hi, Tom. I was trying to catch everything that you mentioned would be part of those revisions, and so I may have heard wrong. So that's why I want to ask the question. Something about a development with 350 units. So I'm not sure what that's about. Do you explain that?
Yes, it's what we're proposing is modifying the language to allow for administrative approval of up to 300 lots. Okay. So anything above that, anything above 300 lots would still have to come to the council.
Okay. And lots are different than units? Yes. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify. And I know I said units, so I said the wrong thing, but okay. I'm supportive of this. As always, I'd like to see the language, but I think that anything we can do to streamline that timeline, never in all the times that I've come to council meetings seen a plat not be just approved on consent agenda without any questions. So I think that especially if it saves time for staff as well. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Anderson?
Tom, have you reached out to the other communities around us? Are they on that 300 number also?
You know, I have seen that several communities have adopted these revisions. I do not know the specific number of the, I'm looking back at Elena because I don't know, she may have done more research than I did on that particular number. Oh, thank you. The 300 number was recommended by the league.
By the league?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Buckley?
Well, I myself am not sure about this, just because when you do the plat, you're talking about the final plat, right?
Correct.
So, and no changes or have happened, and I guess the question I'm asking is, can someone change things that have already been stated and in there? Will that come back for comments or questions from developers? And we don't know what any of these plats will be. I think I need more information on some of this to feel comfortable with not having that come to council. I think that, and I get that you want to have things quickly done and move forward, but as Councilmember Tilkey said, you know, she's never seen something, you know, a final plat come to council that either, you know, wasn't approved right away. So I'm not sure exactly what the purpose is other than making this a little bit faster.
Yeah, I may be able to address that, Councilmember Buckley. I might be able to address a little bit of that and maybe answer a couple of your questions. I've been in development engineering now for over 20 years, and starting at Queen Creek, coming to Gilbert, I've probably processed well over 300 plats that have gone through to the council. I think in that time, I've seen 2 plats come off. Both of the times that a council member had a question, it was about a note that was on the plat and wondering about a note. And we got that addressed, and it was approved. And these were plats anywhere up to, I think, maybe 500 lots, that sort of thing. The final plat is really, it's primarily a survey document. It shows all the meets and bounds, carves out the lots, does the dedications of the land. It's something that our staff reviews with a fine-tooth comb with the engineers and developers. But that is what a final plat is. The preliminary plat oftentimes will have more interaction with staff about setbacks and other things that really do have to do a little more with some of the nuances with a project and how it relates with the code.
Right. I guess, you know, my issue is, and not questioning, obviously, your role in this, because you have a great history. And, but I'm not quite understanding why you wouldn't want it to come to council. I think, I personally think that it's something that, have we seen this in the process?
We have to comply with state law.
Yeah.
So a law was passed last year in 2023 by the state of Arizona, which we're finding a way to word our ordinances to comply with the state law. Good summary, Tom?
Excellent, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're trying to comply with state law. So we're working our way through that process.
Well, then I guess that answers my question. I'm not happy with that. I think that I don't like that at all myself, because I think that, you know, that final review with council and the mayor and questions and things, I think that's important. But I guess the state overrules us.
Yes, they do.
So another thing that we have to abide by, which I will. You know, I mean, if it's a rule, it's a rule, and I appreciate your feedback.
Mayor, can I clarify one thing?
Sure.
I just want to mention that I think Councilmember Buckley makes a good point. The changes in the state law are voluntary. So we're bringing this to you because we recognize the fact that as we've seen these plats come forward, we never see a question from the council, and it will save the developer time. But it is voluntary. The state isn't mandating this.
Thanks for the clarification, Tom. I think what we found, Councilmember Buckley, is with our state legislature over the past several sessions, including the current session that we're in, is they're constantly trying to find ways to speed up the development process wherever they can, and this was one way that they chose that they could pass down to the cities and towns. there are other modifications coming too that were just, I think, signed by the governor today, in fact, that we'll be discussing in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the speeding up of the process, but I also think the process should be thoroughly done and reviewed, and that's just my point on this. But thank you for that information. I appreciate that.
Vice Mayor Anderson?
I was just going to say thank you for clarifying that, but I do know and recognize that it may be voluntary, but if we choose to not do it, someone will be on the phone to Kyle tomorrow, or Kyle or Patrick tomorrow, asking why we're not doing it.
And I think when Tom started this discussion, he mentioned that this was supported by cities and towns throughout the state, because as cities and towns, we are working every day to find ways that we can meet the requests from our state legislators without them forcing things upon us. And so making it voluntary, they're saying wherever anybody can pitch in, let's pitch in. And this is one place that Gilbert said, yes, we can find a way to do that. Tom, what do you need from us on this next step?
This was just to open it up and get your feedback on it. With the next steps, we will be going to Planning Commission with the actual proposed language, and it'll come back to you probably in about a month for formal action should you wish to do so.
We'll come back for public hearing for comments from the public if they would like to do them. Yes, I see Kyle's head doing this.
Okay, I'm glad Kyle's head is
He's
doing it.
sitting right in a spotlight back there, and I can see him. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, Councilmember Torgerson, sorry. Councilmember Torgerson.
Just a quick question, and it's probably an impossible question to ask, or answer. But what would you see as the unintended consequences of this action?
I don't know that I can see any particular unintended consequences. It truly, in my mind, it's been an administrative process. I know the council has every opportunity to review the plats now and make comments, but in my experience, I've not seen it.
I'm just looking for what the downside could be. And, with all the things that the legislature's thrown at towns and cities, including something about a new mobile home designation for every municipality that I've heard about. I'm just looking for our downside. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thanks, Tom. I haven't seen you present to us in a very long time. That's why I was so surprised when you stepped up to the
I
podium.
know, I even wore a tie for you.
You did. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Tom. Next on our agenda is presentation and discussion on accessory dwelling units, which I also know was a bill that was signed by the governor today, a brand new bill. So, Ava.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ava Kutro, Planning Manager, and thank you for the opportunity tonight to discuss accessory dwelling units. This was something I was originally very excited to bring to Council. Staff had worked for over a year revising our standards. We in no way were trying to eliminate accessory dwelling units. We're really looking to streamline the process and just to make sure our design standards were on par with the rest of Gilbert. At the same time we were working on revising the standards, it appears the state was also working on regulations for accessory dwelling units. And as the mayor just mentioned, when I did this slide yesterday, we had that House Bill 2720 had not been signed on the governor, but was on her desk. And you are correct, she did sign it today. So staff will put aside all of our proposed changes that we brought to commission and commission recommended approval of in March. Vice Mayor got to hear those as our liaison to the commission. But tonight, I thought I'd just do a quick run through of House Bill 2720 and how that differs from our current land development code standards, knowing that we will now have to make revisions to come into compliance with House Bill 2720. And our demand for guest homes, accessory dwelling units, and large accessory structures keeps increasing in Gilbert. It's actually doubled in the last 3 years. So looking at our land development code, incidental dwelling units, accessory dwelling units are allowed in our single family 6, which are lots 6,000 square feet, up to our highest SF43 lots that are greater than an acre. And these are allowed with a use permit, and we currently allow 1 guest home and 1 accessory dwelling units. This is actually very generous. Many other municipalities only allow 1 or don't allow them at all. So House Bill 2720 also allows 1 attached and 1 detached accessory dwelling unit as a permitted use. So that's similar to what we currently allow. Then when you go to bullet number 2, they also allow, if you have a lot that's over an acre, you can have an additional accessory dwelling unit as long as you restrict it to an affordable dwelling unit. And they do define affordable as for households that are up to 80% of the area's median income. So again, we're just getting a lot of this language for the first time as well. So that would allow, you're allowed 2, 1 attached, 1 detached. If you're over an acre, you're allowed a third if you make it an affordable unit. But then bullet point number 3 was confusing to us. It states an accessory dwelling unit that is 75% of the gross floor area of the single-family dwelling or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. We're not sure if that's allowing a 4th accessory dwelling unit or if that's the standards for the 3 that are in 1 and 2. It's just poorly written language. Rob Bohr has kept us informed about this House bill, and we have made comments on this language, but it was not clarified. Moving on, the Gilbert Land Development Code says that guest homes cannot be rented and they cannot have full kitchens, while accessory dwelling units can be rented, can have full kitchens. House Bill 2720 does not differentiate between the two. Accessory dwelling units may or may not include kitchen facilities, but they do prohibit municipalities from putting restrictions on long-term rental housing. When you look at long-term rental housing, their definition was for 90 days or on a month-by-month basis. So that also wasn't the clearest language. And it does not require that the renter be somehow related to the owner. How this could affect the town is right now, we would only allow the main house and the ADU to be rented. If you do have 3 units or more, if you're over an acre, there's nothing preventing you from having up to 3 rentals on the property. The Land Development Code also states that the accessory dwelling unit has to be subordinate to the main. We don't define that in our LDC. The House bill does state a single-family dwelling has to have greater square footage than the accessory dwelling unit. So at least we know the accessory dwelling unit has to be smaller in size than the main dwelling on the property. And we do have language that except for secondary dwellings constructed over a detached garage, secondary dwellings shall be located within the building envelopes, meaning they have to meet the same setbacks as the main home.
But the square footage, Ava, there's no minimum or maximum or percentage put on that. So if I have a 2,000 square foot home, the other one could be 1,990 square feet if they fit on the property.
That's what we're assuming. We're still reviewing the language, and now that it has been signed, we'll meet with the league and other municipalities. But this is probably the biggest change, because when we look at our R43 lots, they require side and rear setbacks of 30 feet. Then it goes down to 20 feet, 15 feet. And only on our smallest lots do we start approaching 5 to 10 foot setbacks. Under House Bill 2720, if you look at the last bullet, rear or side setbacks for accessory dwelling units cannot be more than 5 feet from the property line. So that does bring accessory dwelling units much closer to property lines than currently allowed in the LDC. Additional LDC language is that the design of the accessory dwelling unit shall be compatible with the design of the principal dwelling on the site in materials, colors, and architectural style. House Bill 2720 specifically takes that out. It says that we cannot require an accessory dwelling unit match the exterior design, roof pitch, et cetera, of the main house. So we do get proposals for container units for ADUs, and we've always said, no, you have to match the architecture of the main house. House Bill 2720 does now remove that. We also require that all ADUs provide an on-site, meaning off-street parking space. House Bill 2720 does prohibit us from requiring additional parking on-site for the ADUs. Lastly, the Land Development Code requires an administrative use permit for all accessory dwelling units. And throughout this process, staff gets to review the dwelling unit, make sure it matches the main home. Letters are also sent to the neighbors to make them aware that an accessory dwelling unit may be going up in their neighborhood. While they can't make demands, they could certainly make suggestions at that time. Under House Bill 2720, accessory dwelling units are now permitted uses. So by right, you can have them, so you would just apply for building permits and there would not be any use permit required. The last thing that House Bill 2720 states is that a municipality has to adopt regulations by January 1st, 2025, or else accessory dwelling units shall be allowed on all lots zoned for residential use in the municipality without limits. So we will have to quickly come up with code language, and you'll see me again shortly before January 1st so that we do have regulations in place by the deadline. So very quick summary, we've really just signed today, so hot off the presses. If you have any questions, I might be able to answer them. We'll see.
Thank you, Ava. Vice Mayor Anderson?
Ava, is this voluntary like the final plat?
No,
No.
no, it is not.
Too bad.
Councilmember Tilke?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is an example of it's hard to keep track of what's going down at the legislature, and as they continue to push forward agendas such as this, it is really taking away the public's ability to have any input into what's happening in their community and their neighbors' hoods. That's just an editorial on my part at this point. Yeah. The question I have is, how does this impact HOAs and CCNRs? Because we've just passed some things in our HOA that could be in conflict of this if somebody tried to move forward.
Mayor, Councilmember Tilke, I don't know. I'll see if Lena or perhaps Rob Bohr knows any more on that.
And we don't have to have an answer tonight. I think that as we move forward, that's an area I'd like us to explore so that we can make sure that we are letting them know, unless you have an answer today.
Okay, according to Rob Bohr, CCNRs would still apply.
Okay. So in some respects, then, part of our neighborhoods are protected just based on their CCNRs, but there are a lot of new properties, or as we've found, these infill desires coming forward of large lots that maybe the family members aren't around anymore. We're going to see more and more of this, and we won't have much to say about that. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Anderson?
So 3 is the maximum, is that what you're saying?
Not 100% sure. That is what we think. Sorry. Because you're definitely allowed one attached and one detached. And if you're over an acre, you are allowed a third if it's affordable. It's the language in 3 that's confusing.
Yeah.
We're hoping that just gives standards for the ADUs that are permitted by 1 and 2, but it's not clear language.
I mean, I could see, as Councilmember Tilke's talking about, if you're on an acre lot, you have one home, I could see somebody getting creative and trying to create a tiny house subdivision in their backyard.
Yes, if you're on an acre lot, you could definitely have an attached, you could have a detached, and you could have a third as long as it's affordable and eligible for people that make up to 80% of the area median income.
Which in Gilbert is still over $80,000.
Yeah.
I mean, because the median income in Gilbert's what, $107,000 today? So 80% of that would be up in the
So
80,
81,000.
yeah, over $80,000, my basic math, yes.
And Mayor, Vice Mayor, I just received clarification that the talk is that 3 is the max. So hopefully then bullet 3 does just give standards for the 3 that would be allowed by 1 and 2.
So bullet 3 shouldn't really be a bullet 3. It should be
Correct.
under 1 and 2.
Yes.
The way that it was written up. Councilmember Tilke, did you have something else?
Just one thing, and I know we won't have the answer today, but as we move forward, I'm curious on who's enforcing this, the affordable unit in the long term. So I'm sure the legislature in their wisdom has already thought of that and has that, will have it written out for us. But anyway, I think that will be important.
Yes, and here's the definition they give. So it would have to be restricted through a deed restriction or a development agreement with the municipality. So a little more information, but
In reality, there's no way to enforce that at all. Any
what
other?
if you're renting it and you receive a raise? And now you make 82% of the median income.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that would be able to be enforced. And we're talking now about putting 3 homes to an acre, essentially, right? In a neighborhood that would have acre lots, thinking that there's going to be 1 home, but you could put 3 homes on that acre now, and we have no say. The town, the neighbors, has no say over even design of those buildings and what those buildings will look like on that property. Or if they have parking for them, sorry, Eva, or if they have parking for them, right?
That's exactly what I was going to add, Mayor.
Yeah.
So we couldn't have a say on the design. We couldn't require on-site parking. And of course, on those large lots, we lose a lot of the large setbacks that are currently required.
I mean, I'm thinking about our 3 neighborhoods. If this was allowed in our neighborhoods, the people would have to park on the street in our neighborhoods.
You just gave me an idea.
Right? Oh, yeah, there you go. You're welcome. Any other comments? Councilmember Torgerson, any comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Question for, I did notice when it said municipalities, so the CC&Rs of HOAs would remain intact. We'd be dealing with the neighborhoods that don't have official CC&Rs, correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Torgerson, that is what I've been informed, or neighborhoods that don't have limits on their, or standards for ADUs in their CC&Rs.
Now, also, it probably cut out when you said it, properties less than an acre, are they affected?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Torgerson, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking. This would apply.
Are they? My question is that properties under an acre, how does this law apply to those properties?
This law applies to all single-family zones. So this would also allow the ADUs on 6,000 square foot lots as well as over an acre lots. But you're only allowed the 3rd unit if you're over an acre.
Okay, so that I wanted that clarification because I missed that in the conversation somehow. So on top of all that, basically, if somebody wants to take a mobile home and slap it on the side of their property, we don't get to say a word, do we?
Correct.
We may,
Wow, what a great legislature.
Mayor, Councilman, we may get to say something about mobile homes under the building code. It might have to be on a permanent foundation or something like that, but I would have to discuss that in more detail with our building department.
And I would have to say that if we're not able to look at any details of what's being built there, that would, bring that into question, right? Yes, but Councilmember Torgerson, any single-family residential SF 6 and up in the town of Gilbert can now have a second dwelling unit on the property, and anything that's over an acre can have up to 3.
And Mayor,
yes.
we did say SF6 to SF43. We also have an
A
SFD
and D,
category, and we'll have to look if it applies to those categories as well. Like SFA allows detached and attached, so we'll have to see how far this extends.
So it may be every single-family residential lot in the town of Gilbert, is what we're saying.
It may be, yes.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Chris Payne.
Yeah, just want to clarify, language from the bill, the question about the CCNRs, it says, this section does not prohibit restrictive covenants concerning ADUs entered into between private parties. So the bill expressly allows for HOAs. If they have prohibited ADUs, then they can stay prohibited under the bill. Or I'm assuming they could, an HOA could prohibit those if they go through the process and amend their existing CCNRs.
So the bill was signed today. It doesn't go into effect till when? 60 days after the session ends? Is that correct? Or does it go? Rob? 90 days after the session ends? I can't remember what the technical. Effective date?
Council, the effective date is 90 days after sine die, so we don't yet know when that is. But this, it requires us to establish an ordinance by January 1 of 2025, so.
My train of thought was, if there are HOAs out there listening right now that don't have ADUs in their CCNRs and want to update something, they have 90 days from the date that the session ends. I'm going to say session ends because it's more understandable for our residents than sine die.
I believe, Mayor, I believe that would be the case, that they would be able to make that change within that timeframe. Yeah.
I'm just spitballing, yeah, for the sake of it. Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Councilmember Buckley, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, and actually the mayor asked one of the questions that I was thinking of is, can the HOAs now go in and put something in their HOAs that prohibit that? And
They can get it done before the bill goes into
before the 90 days.
And it's not 90 days from today. It's 90 days, and I want to be very clear about that, anybody listening. It's 90 days from the day that this legislative session ends. And this session is not ended or closed yet. When they go sine die, which is what Rob just said, but that's officially the last day of this legislative session. 90 days from that date is when these bills go into effect. And we don't know when that date's going to be at this point. We don't know when the legislative session's going to end at this point.
So I'm assuming or thinking that the HOAs are up on this.
It just got passed, it was just signed by the governor today, so I don't know what the HOAs are doing or know about it.
So my other question is setbacks. And if I recall correctly on this, someone could come in and if you're in an acre lot, you have space and everything, but they can build a building or put a mobile home or whatever within 5 feet of your fence, of your property line.
That is what the House Bill language says. It's the last bullet in capital on here, set that it prohibits a municipality from setting rear or side setbacks for accessory dwelling units that are more than 5 feet from the property line. Currently, on an R43 lot, the accessory dwelling unit has to be within the building envelope, and those side and rear setbacks are 30 and 40 feet.
But we wouldn't be able to enforce those any longer. It would be 5 feet under this bill.
Even for the acre properties. Wow. I don't know. I wish I'd have been a lobbyist on this because I would have been there every day against this. Wow. Pardon me?
Our legislators wanted it. They've been pushing it.
Well, we need to be looking at them. Wow.
Just-
This is,
Councilmember Torgerson, I heard something from you.
Other than a gasp of exasperation with our legislature, that's really all you heard was me just gasping that, you almost feel like, why are we here? They're telling us how to run our municipality remotely. It's fantastic. End of my sarcasm. I am really, it really does strip away some of the, and although I'm supportive of people having accessory dwelling units for a myriad of reasons, but to do it in such a manner is really counterproductive for a community. Oh, well, I guess it doesn't pay to complain today.
So what do we do to get rid of this?
State law.
Yeah, well, Chris, how do we do this?
We've been fighting it. There's nothing we can do about it at this point. It has been signed by the governor. We've been fighting it the best we can, and it passed today. And so it is now reality that we now have to figure out how to work with as municipalities.
And Mayor, Councilmember Buckley, many other states have already passed this legislation. When we go to planning conferences, we were just in Minnesota, and their mayor, in their opening keynote, said how proud they are that they now have no limits on accessory dwelling units to help the housing shortage. When I was in California, I was actually on a tour where they were really stating how fantastic this is and showing us all these lots with multiple units on it. And I was the naysayer in the group, like, whoa, I don't think that this is great, but and they all thought I was terrible.
And I don't want this taken wrong either. I am all for affordable housing and helping the people that do not have a home, but not at the risk of my own family and putting units that are 5 feet from me. There could be a mobile home 5 feet on the other side of the fence.
And Mayor, Councilmember, as I mentioned, Gilbert is and always has been very generous with allowing an accessory dwelling unit and a guest house on single-family properties.
Right,
So
right.
we were always supportive of allowing them. It's just now we have additional constraints on how we can set standards and regulate them.
Laws like this will change the landscape of our communities, all of our communities.
Yep.
Vice Mayor, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. Thank you, Ava.
Mayor,
Thank you very
Mayor,
much. Oh,
if I
yes,
could just
Chris.
add, Councilmember Buckley, to your comment, what can you do, the council, the community, what the legislature giveth, they can take away, meaning nothing prohibits at the next session that's getting revisited, maybe revised, or potentially repealed. If there's a lot of pushback from the people of Arizona, then maybe the legislature will take another look at it in a future session.
Great point, Chris. This is to answer the affordable housing situation, the housing crisis. They're looking for ways to create more dwelling units, and this is the legislature's answer to that. So, thank you, Ava. Yes, oh, did you have another question?
No, I was just saying there's a lot of other ways to create affordable housing. There's a ton of land. I mean, there's land west of Buckeye. There's land, north of Scottsdale. There's massive land that we can create affordable housing on versus trying to put them in everyone's backyard.
Nobody wants to live in those places.
So, well, I think I have found my niche. And that is and I'll be talking to Chris to see how, it won't do any good, I'm probably sure, but I just think this is very, very wrong.
Well, thank you again for the discussion, and you'll see me again soon when we have to amend the LDC.
Thanks, Ava. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ava, very much.
We have one more presentation and discussion on community preservation ordinance. Kyle.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kyle Maris, Development Services Director. I've got about 10 slides to go over with you to talk about the Community Preservation Ordinance and where we're at now. As you remember, we had a discussion with Mayor and Council last fall about a potential Community Preservation Ordinance. And sought direction at that time from Mayor and Council on how to move forward with it. So I will give you an overview again and then let you know where we're at. Again, what is a community preservation ordinance and what does it actually do and how will it make a difference for us? This will enable the town to address issues of blight beyond what is currently authorized in our code. There are certain things in our code now that we can't touch because it's not spelled out. So we're limited to certain things like weeds, but not necessarily things like broken windows or fences that are falling over, things of that nature. So what this ordinance is meant to do is give us a little bit more authority in contacting residents and having discussions with them and helping them find the resources that are needed to maybe make these changes to their site. Again, this is not necessarily to be a punitive ordinance. It's more of a tool that we want to put in place in order to help connect dots with folks that may be in need with resources in order to change things on properties. These are some of the slides that we talked about at the retreat, showing things that Lori's team is not able to address at the moment, our code compliance team. These are some of the pictures they've taken through Gilbert that show some different conditions that may not be ideal and that we would like to be able to work with the property owners on in order to help the sites. This was probably one of the favorite ones from last year, all of the different stuff in the backyard of this residence. And then again, I mentioned even things like broken windows or boarded up windows. There's nothing currently in our code if it's not a life safety or health issue that we can really lean on and address property owners with. Again, with this ordinance, our hope is to help connect some folks with resources, and I've got some slides that'll show that in just a minute. At the retreat, we did an overview of the ordinance, the way it was drafted at the time. At the time, it had 4 different parts. We've since refined it into 3 different parts. We combined the abatement with administration and enforcement. General provisions and the maintenance standards remained the same. We provided examples of different residential and commercial challenges that we've had across the community. Some of the pictures that I just went through are the same pictures that you saw last fall. We had a really good discussion about how the ordinance should be applied. The discussion and the end of the discussion was that the ordinance shall be applied townwide. And then takeaways and recommendations. This is where we wanted to hear from council and gain some of that direction as we were coming back to you early this spring. So what we heard at the retreat was continue to provide information and education on resources to aid residents. You had a really good presentation from Melanie's team earlier today. You can see a lot of the resources that are available that we can continue to push out. And then I've got some slides that show some other resources as well. Incorporate language to prevent abuse of ordinance. Through putting together this ordinance, we had a really good team involved. We had folks from economic development, we had folks from development services, we had folks from the legal department. So Elena and Cole were able to incorporate language into this draft that you have now that talks about prevention of abuse of the ordinance and steps that the town could actually take in order for us not to continue to receive additional complaints. One of the things that we know that we do need to address, and before we come back, are how does the town not become necessarily the HOA enforcer in this? So we've heard that loud and clear, and we need to take a look at what some of the other surrounding communities do and what we can do to move forward so that HOA boards don't just say, please go talk to the town, and now the town is the enforcer necessarily. Provide examples of public nuisance and non-conforming use. This is an interesting one. We had the conversation at the retreat about this maybe being a case-by-case basis. A non-conforming use a lot of times is a use that may have started in the county or predates some of our codes, but it's more of a land use and really needs to be kind of looked into. Where a public nuisance is something that's more happening currently on the site in Gilbert. So that's one of those where we'll have to take a close look as those pop up to see how they would be interpreted and fall underneath the code. Clarify only in Gilbert that this does not apply to county standards. Again, Elena and Cole did a great job of adding in the clarity so that it's very clear that this community preservation ordinance would only apply within the town of Gilbert. And then council gave us direction to bring forward the document for council review and discussion. I did email you all the draft ordinance last week. We've got plenty of time in order to review it and make any types of changes before we come back on June 18th, hopefully for adoption at that time. I mentioned I had some slides that talked about some programs and some help that the town can provide. This is the Emergency and Minor Home Repair Program. Again, this slide is directly out of the retreat slides. This program is available to income-eligible Gilbert homeowners to assist with health or safety-related home repairs. And you can see there on the screen examples of what the repairs could include. Additionally, the town has a roofing and repair replacement program, and we do an exterior painting program. The town is one of those great partners with nonprofit organizations who can also assist with emergency minor home repair needs. You can see there's Ability 360's home modification program, the Home Safety and Critical Home Repair, and Habitat for Humanity are some of the different programs that we can partner with. And then I have this card that I received recently. It's from Community Resources, again, Melanie's group, that talks about finding the full list of resources. So these are cards that can be given out either by our code compliance team, by community resource teammates, but scanning the QR code or going to that website then would provide folks with additional resources to help them in any type of need. Again, I mentioned that the June 18th Town Council hearing is our next step. We've got a couple outreach things set up between now and then to gain some additional feedback from folks, make any types of necessary changes to the council draft, and then we'll come back to you on the 18th. That is what I have for you this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Any comments or questions for Kyle? Vice Mayor Anderson?
Being a cynic, so when we have blight in the backyard because of an accessory dwelling unit, will we use this code to address it?
On a complaint.
Great
On a
question.
complaint basis, Vice Mayor.
Great question.
Yeah, that is funny that Vice Mayor Anderson said that, because when I saw that photo, it came in my head that could be my next door neighbor's backyard.
Councilmember Tilkey?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Kyle and the entire team. I know this has been a long process for you all. I know I've shared some comments with you, and I appreciate you looking at that. Elena and Cole, I know you're looking into a couple things for me. Just so the council knows, I appreciate looking at that HOA connection because we do not want to be the first call. That's why we have HOAs. That's why I pay big bucks to our HOA to make sure that happens, right? So it's not the town of Gilbert's responsibility, but we should be there when we're needed to be there, obviously. I know you're looking into this, but there's an exception in there, which I think is standard language that I want to take a look at, exempting government from this. I don't believe there's anything in this ordinance that we should be allowed to do on our own property that we wouldn't allow in somebody else's property, but perhaps there is, and you'll find that and let me know. But and I do understand that we don't have jurisdiction over some of the county or the schools, but it doesn't mean we can't go in there and let them know something's going on. And I don't know what the process at that point, but I don't think they should just be exempted or ourselves. The other portion I appreciate is the connection to resources, and I think as we continue to have more conversations in our community, it kind of ties back to the conversation we just had on kindness and helping each other in the community. We can determine resources because there are people in our neighborhoods that either because their physical needs or their financial needs cannot keep up. And so they're knowing that we have some resources is going to be really important. I've asked Kyle and the team that I talked to today to consider, or for the council to consider as well, that since this is a new program, we don't know how it's really going to work. Instead of initiating a pilot program, that we collect data and get feedback every 3 months to see how it's going for the first year at least. Because I think that we're going to run into some things that we might want to be aware of so that if we need to change the ordinance, we can. I read through it very quickly and made lots of comments, but I haven't read it word for word. So I may have other comments when I do that, but that's my, I guess, 2 cents on this. And again, as the mayor mentioned, this will be more of a reactive than a proactive, going out there looking in people's backyards and things. That's not what this is about, and I just want to make sure that people understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Torgerson? Any comments?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll just say that I think I agree with Councilmember Tilke that this needs to be followed up on. If we bring this back in June, when would this go into effect, Kyle?
I believe it's 30 days.
Is it 30 days? So it would go into effect mid-July, well, let's just say, for argument's sake. And so this council would see this, you could come back to us maybe with an update within 3 or so months after that, so sometime this fall, maybe even at the fall retreat or something, give us an update on how the program's working, and if you've seen anything that we need to maybe take a look at, that's always a great idea, and I think we tend to do that in Gilbert anyway. We're very data-driven, and so we need to see what's working and what's not working, and as we kind of joked, but this is on a complaint basis. This isn't the town driving around looking for situations that would come to our attention. This is somebody calling in to complain. But if I call and complain and say my neighbor Bobby has 4-foot weeds in her yard, I best not have 4-foot weeds in my yard too, because then if the town comes out to look, they're gonna say, we both need to have a little talking to, or whatever, right?
Correct.
It's gonna be on that kind of a situation. You used that example with me earlier, so I just used it again. And so I think that it's important to note that, but I also think it's important to note that this is the next step for the future of Gilbert. As we're looking at being a city of the future, Vice Mayor, you refer to all the time, doesn't mean us becoming a city, it means us staying a town, but staying a very well-run, good-looking, clean, forward-looking community, and that's what we're trying to do here with this, is to make sure that it's done in the same way across the whole entire community. We're looking at the community in the same light, and that we're making sure that blight isn't happening any place within our community. So I think it's all part of what we're planning for the future of this town.
Thank you, Mayor. And if I may add, I think Gilbert is one of the only communities without some sort of preservation ordinance.
Thank you for adding that too. And again, we've been so focused on growth that we haven't had to think about the fact now that, I mean, I've been in my house almost 29 years. Those homes are now aging, those neighborhoods are now aging, and you're starting to see this, but that doesn't mean that a new home in a new neighborhood couldn't end up with a broken window that sits that way for quite some time too. So we have to look at everything, at the overall, the whole entire community. So we appreciate that. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
See you in June. That was the last item on this agenda, so I will go ahead and adjourn the study session, and we'll be back for our next meeting. Thank you.